Hello, hello. Welcome to the Dorothy Edit with me, Dorothy Koomson, and I am talking to another wonderful author today about their book. And so I'm not going to hold you up. I'm going to throw it over. So, hello, Kelechi. How are you?
I'm good, Dorothy. Thank you for having me.
So could you tell me the name of your book and what it's about?
The name of my book is Awakened, and it follows the story of a journalist called Pels, who's having quite a hard time in her love life, but at the same time, she is also focused on, and has been for a while, on the disappearances of young Black people across London. And, you know, when some are found, their bodies are found by bodies of water. And so she wants to get to the bottom of what's happening, because to her, it can't be a coincidence. But for some reason, the police keep ruling it as, unsuspicious. And so while she's wanting to cover that, but her editor at the newspaper is saying nobody's going to be interested in that story. Instead, he asks her to go to look at another story in Benin. And she ends up taking part in a spirit vine ceremony, and then literally discovers that she has these dormant powers, these superpowers. And then, you know, her story kind of builds from there, where she's finding out about the underworld, not just in London, but across the world, and how she might be able to, with the powers that she's, you know, newly discovered, might be able to help and possibly save somebody very close to her.
Okay, so what was the inspiration behind this book? Because it seems very, very detailed and very involved.
Yeah, my inspiration is literally because Black children are going missing. Young Black people are going missing, not just in London, but across the UK. And when their bodies are found, usually by bodies of water, so that's lakes, rivers, the sea, almost immediately, the police say that there's nothing suspicious about it. Now, I'm not saying that what I end up exploring in the novel is the reason that this is happening, but sometimes when we want to have conversations, when we need, to kind of ignite and spark certain conversations, we're going to have to put them in fiction so people realize that it's actually very real.
Yeah. Okay, so who was your favorite character or favorite person to write about with this book?
My favorite character actually has to be the humanoid who is running for mayor of London. So he's AI, in artificial general intelligence, and he is running for mayor of London. He wasn't programmed to do so. So we see an element essentially of free will, but he wants to run for mayor of London, and he has these ideas about what could be different. I wanted him to be mysterious. I wanted him to, be enigmatic, and really get us to start thinking about, well, what does it mean? We're so kind of having to embrace artificial intelligence in our day-to-day lives now. At what point does it move into our governance?
Yeah. Okay. And what was the best thing about writing this book?
I think the best thing about writing this book was that it allowed me to have an escape, really. I mean, I say an escape, it's a rather tempestuous world that Pels exists in. But in my actual life at the time, I had so many things going on, so many different challenges. So it was nice to be able to have some control, as it were, of somebody else's destiny, really, and to be able to craft a world where questions were asked and maybe some were answered, and even those that go unanswered, it leaves the chance for something else.
Yeah. What do you want readers to take away from this book? Because there seems to be a lot there. So what do you want them to take away from it?
I really want readers to tap into their own power. The powers that I described that Pels has. Okay, maybe we don't have those specific powers, but we still do have a power in society. We do still have powers in the day to day. And it's to not forget our power, because I feel like in certain aspects of society, we are socialized into believing that we are powerless, and in that we are essentially handing over our power to people who might use it for nefarious means. So it's very important for us to, through Pels, tap into our own power and just do the little things that end up being big things in our day-to-day lives.
Can you give us a reading from your book?
Absolutely. So we'll start at chapter 14, right in the middle. Temidire Ogundele, 19, was last seen in the early hours of 7th of February 2026 in the Haythrock area, where he was attending a yoga retreat. He had been due to teach a class there later that day. Officers searching the area found a body shortly after 9 a.m. 2 days later, Haythrock police said. In a statement to the press, the police said there were no suspicious circumstances surrounding the death. The sun chose its warmest rays to dance on Pell's skin as she headed out of the retreat centre, joining the other participants for the excursion to Cotonou. Their guides had mapped out the roads not blocked by protesters. Pels wondered if this was merely a logistical decision or one prompted by the discomfort of the guests being made aware that, in some ways, they were not welcome in Benin. I've got to figure out a way to get more of an insight into all of this, Pels promised herself. The transportation pod sped through the streets, and as she looked out of the window, vibrant colours enveloped Pels' senses as they made their way through the bustling city. The vivid splashes of traditional clothing and textiles painted a stunning cultural canvas. Once they reached the market in Cotonou and Pels stepped out of the pod, she raised her face to the sky. Everything is changing, was the only thought that flitted by as they all began to head away from the pod and towards the crowds. Isn't it incredible? Harrison asked, walking beside her. His eyes sparkled with appreciation for the rich heritage that surrounded them. Absolutely, Pels agreed, undeniably awestruck as she took in the lively, renowned market. The air was filled with the tantalizing aroma of spices and freshly cooked food, while energetic music infused every corner of the city with life. She looked up and saw drones flying overhead, spraying a thin mist around the town centre. Harrison eventually peeled his eyes away from Pels' face to follow her gaze up to the sky. Those are sanitation drones, he said, answering her wordless question. Their government issued to intermittently spray antiviral solutions over the city to ensure there is less of a spread of diseases. Pels nodded. The perception of certain African countries was that they were underdeveloped, yet here the government was taking precautions to prevent illness. Before she could romanticize the drones any further, Harrison's voice sliced into her thoughts. One agenda point of the recent protests is that these sprays can affect local crops. They've been questioning why, if they were truly in the interest of health and safety, the drones are only issued to jurisdictions heavily populated by tourists. They have a point, Pels replied, disappointed that she hadn't considered these perspectives. But being here, she was starting to understand more and more that the issues African countries face were truly multi-layered and not immediately identifiable when one is a tourist. When in doubt, it's likely capitalism, Pels thought somberly. Don't the people protesting have someone in government to advocate for them? From what I know, the people have had a long and complicated history with being advocated for. You see that statue over there? Harrison gestured to a stone statue of a smiling older man in cloth shorts with the fist in the air defiantly. It loomed over the marketplace. That is Narcisse Musa. He is praised as one of the few to gain his own freedom from slavery. The complicated part is that he then became a prominent slave merchant when he returned to Benin, a place then known as Dahomey. The statue was the cause of a lot of controversy a few years ago. Yeah, I can understand why people would be annoyed. What was revolutionary about him gaining his freedom only to do that? Well, the wealth he amassed obviously became generational, and so his great-great-grandchildren used their wealth to buy back artifacts that originate from here, from European collectors. The artifacts they've managed to regain belong to the family technically, but are displayed in the museums around the country, including some you saw the other day. Pels took in the statue a moment longer, contemplating this. It's a lot to take in, right? Harrison said, still watching her. Hope I'm doing okay as your white, mansplaining tour guide. Pels merely supplied him with a wry smile.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So where can we find out more about you?
I'm at Kelechi on across social media platforms, and my website is kelechiokafor.com.
Okay, fantastic. And thank you so much for talking to us today. And I hope you can come back for your next book and we can talk about that as well.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Bye.